I feel like a common thing that like people that are starting out are always like concerned about is like their portfolio, obviously. And there's also so many platforms that you could use, so many ways of doing it. And I think I would always just say, just do it, just start it like wherever you can, as long as you have like, because if like the portfolio is the one that's hindering you from applying to jobs, then that's kind of hard, right? Because then you like kind of just pushing everything back. So I would say like start with like something that's like easy for you to do first as you work on your actual portfolio perhaps. And then even right now, like I have my actual portfolio, but I have some of the stuff that are like still work in progress. But you know, like as long as you like just do your portfolio, just have something to show.
The Research Labs podcast by SundayPyjamas.
Hi, Samantha. Welcome to this show.
Hello, Nishi.
How is it going for you?
I mean, it's going good. You know, a bit busy with everything, but it's really nice enjoying the last bits of summer. I mean, I'm still working, but enjoying the last bits of summer while I can.
Right. So you have your internship right now. How is that going?
Yes, that's right. So it's going really well, I would say. Like I'm halfway through my internship and it's been really nice. Everyone's been so good and it's like I'm learning a lot of things. So I'm really looking forward to like the remaining like months that I have in my internship. And at the same time, it's also really making me realize like the pathway like that I'm hoping to get into. So yeah, I would say like my internship is going really well.
Right. Is it what you thought it would be like while still being in college?
I would say it is a mix of both. So like before, like this would I would say that this is the first time that I've actually like as you said like had like a position that would be outside of like my university's positions. And it's a bit weird like working like that 9 to 5 and also working with other people that are not designers, because typically I'd work with just designers with like school, and we obviously have like the same type of like education, same way of thinking for the most part. But then going into like the industry, you get to really work with like, for example, your engineers, your product managers, like your stakeholders. And it is a bit more different because you have to balance like their different priorities and like their different skill sets. So I would say like that was something that I knew I was gonna encounter that, but at the same time it was still like a bit of oh wow, like this is like pretty different.
I understand. So what we have in common is, I think, the background of UX design. You're getting started with it. The only difference is that I did not study UX design in college. So how is it like to study UX design? And I think you also have a psychology minor, if I'm not wrong.
Yes. So I would say it is like I would say it did help me because in terms of my education in UX, I had a lot more of the research background. So because I am backed up by the university, so that means like they're pretty like academic focused at times, but it still had the practical stuff. But because of that, like I was able to really like get my like foundations on like the research part of UX, so like the discovery process and even like the evaluation aspect of that in terms of the usability testing. Which also at the same time, yeah, because I did have that minor in psychology, I originally wanted to go into marketing, but then I realized that UX was more right around like my area of like combining psychology and and design. And with that it was also like, you know, when you do like your usability testings or like even your like discovery interviews, you apply a lot of like, say, like the stuff that you like learn in psychology in terms of like, oh, how do you set up like an experiment, like you have to figure out like your confounding variables, you have to make sure you counterbalance um your test if you're gonna do like A/B testing. So I would say it's like that those things are kind of like I got more of like some of the granular stuff as well as the high level stuff in my education, which I also really liked because I mean, yeah, like it's also different when you apply it into the industry because obviously like it is like very different. I'm realizing that now because you can't necessarily follow like a straight arrow process when you're in the industry when you work on your projects that are very different. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Talking about the process, I think in college you would have a different sort of process than in the industry because you have to take into consideration the business and how design impacts the business. So how do you think like uh, your process has evolved, or do you see any new things that you learned, or kind of skipping any other old things that you had?
Yeah, so I would say like this actually also answers your question earlier in terms of what surprised me going into like the industry was that I couldn't follow like the design process, for example, that I was used to because I was going into projects that were not started by myself. It was already projects that were there, and I'm kind of jumping in the middle of that, or like sometimes like at the, like more on the beginning, or sometimes more at the end. So it's not that I'm like starting right from like the discovery. Oh, I came up with this problem, for example, because obviously with like school, some of the problems that you tackle are like more like problems that you kind of decided that oh this seems to be a problem, whereas in the business it's actually problems that your business like um identified and that you need to like focus on. So I would say like yeah, like that would be like the difference in the discovery process is that I can't necessarily like follow my own process. I have to kind of cater and adapt based on the project. So I guess like an example of that would be like some of the projects that I had to do where like some a designer already had like started the discovery process and like started some of like the initial sketches, and I'm coming in there like learning all of the stuff that were already done, and then doing like discovery process but not necessarily like what's already been done but like more discovery process for myself, so I know like where we are at currently and what I still need to do. And again whereas like if I were to be like in doing a project for school, I know that I have complete ownership over that, or at least my group have complete ownership right from the beginning to the end. But and as you said, like balancing the needs of like different people, like for school I just have to worry about what I think, what my group mates think, and what my professor thinks, which for the most part it's pretty straightforward. Whereas like if you were in the business, I have to worry about so many conflicting things as well. Like there's different stakeholders, they might have like different needs. There's different like even like in like a business you have different departments and they all like cross functionally work together. So a lot of those like goes into like that way that again like it's more like adapting to the project rather than like imposing your own design process on it.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Like you have to get some context and get onboarded if a project is already going on, and like the liberty to choose the projects it's not theirs, but definitely you can choose what kind of industry you want to work in, and sort of apply your design skills. So I think there are um, different parts in like yeah user experience design. First, I think comes the discovery part, which you rightly mentioned, where what problem needs to be worked on is figured, and then comes the strategy part where you wireframe, sketch, talk to the users. Then you go into, let's say, making more high fidelity mockups and then prototyping, um, and actually then interviewing users. So, which parts of this process excite you the most, and like, what have you found yourself enjoying working on?
Mm, yeah, that's a good question because so for me originally when I was gonna go into UX, I thought I was gonna enjoy design like a lot more. But then as I went through and then like did more work in UX, I realized that I also really like the research part of it. Like I also really like talking to the users and hearing like what they have to say, like both in like the discovery process of like interviewing like their pain points and really like feeling where they're coming from, but also towards the end of getting to really test like your prototype and then validating what you have, like whether or not it works or what you need to change. But at the same time I still like it's like kind of like different things, like because the design aspect I think for the most part that could be like your alone creative time. So you can like just do it like while you're like ideating, coming up with plans. That's more of your time to like be more creative and really like just get in like sometimes like really get in your head and get in the space and the head of your user as well. So I would say it for me, it really depends on like my mood at times. It's like, oh, okay, do I feel like talking to people right now? Then I really like the research part of it. And also again, like it's also like, oh, that would be my time to really validate that, okay, my design makes sense, my prototype is actually addressing their needs. So that's also really nice, like to feel that, oh, um, that's the thing that I like about UX as well. It's like you have research backing up what you're doing. It's not that you're just doing it for this, like say, the sake of doing it. You're not just designing it because you think it looks nice. You're designing it, and you know that your designs are backed up by what your user actually needs. So that's also really nice to just like have that type of validation. So I would say, yeah, I didn't really answer your question because I like both like aspects of like the like design ideation part, and but I also like the research part of it. So it just really depends on my mood, I guess.
Like I don't know how to say it, but you rightly brought it up by saying that UX design and through the research it helps solve real problems and it has a real utility to it. So it's functional design, I would say, which helps the users get through a certain through what they're looking to solve, or what they're looking to achieve through the platform. um, so I think, if when it comes to psychology, I don't know if you have thought about it this way, but I was actually thinking about it that it also helps, since we're doing design. Once we have the information, the left and right brain are both like working in sync. So the creative side is the left side, I think, and the right side is the more analytical side. So we actually apply both while working, and like you said, depending on the mood, it gets organized. Our minds get organized, and we work accordingly. So yeah, good point.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say you're completely right with that. Like, with UX, you're applying both like logical thinking, but also like creative thinking, which is like what I really like about that as well. Because as you said, like, oh, when I like I maybe I'm getting like bored of like or like I'm getting like a creative block, and but at the same time I know that this is like I could also think like very logically about this, and I know that I have other tasks where I could like think like in a different way. So it's like as you said, like it's exercising different like parts of like your brain, your way of thinking, because like at times like when you set up like like the research process of it, and then also like even like with like the whole UX flow, you have to make sure that in some way it also makes sense for the user. It's not just you're coming up with just like some random UX flow that doesn't make sense. um so as you said, like I feel like it's a nice balance of like you can get to exercise like more creative ways of thinking, because that's also something that they like also want to what's it called, promote. You have your ideation process, your diverge process where you want to create, like, think of all like the creative ideas, or even like how wacky like the ideas are right at the beginning, and then you just do like process of elimination. So I feel like, yeah, you do have like that whole like think as creatively, but then at the same time you want to like make sure that it also makes sense, you so you think it narrowly towards the end, and it's just like that constant like going back and forth. So yeah, you have a really good point with that.
Yeah, I think going back and forth reminds me of iterations. So, do you do a lot of iterations, and like, do you think that helps you? Um, I think that having, yeah, a good number of iterations really helps until you have any further new ideas, really helps build the product in a good way.
Hmm. Yes, yes. No, I totally agree. Iterations, I feel like as UX designers, we go through that a lot. You've learned to detach yourself as well from your designs, because you never know if that design's going to get scrapped, or like, it's either it gets scrapped by like your other like internal like people, your internal stakeholders, your team, or it gets scrapped by the user. So I have learned to like also like as like detach like yourself, and it's not personal if like they don't like it, or if it's not working. It's really just, it's the design, it's not. And then that's your opportunity to design something better, because as you said, like you just there's like gone through so many iterations, and I feel like you have for like you to go into UX, you have to be very comfortable with just like editing and revising your work like so many times. And again, like not taking it too hard if someone gives you feedback about your design that's not too nice. I feel like at this point I just like welcome it, but at the same time, you also want to make sure that um, which feedback is like something that you take with a grain of salt. Because obviously, like that's why you gotta do like more research to make sure that you don't just like say have one um, feedback that's gonna impact everything, but at the same time, some of the outlier feedback are also important. So I think, yeah, like there's a lot of like balancing around, just figuring out your priorities.
Yeah, I think as designers, we have to be listening really well for like feedback that is directly given to us, indirectly meant for the designs. So, and it is for most of the times, it is for the better of, building that product and advancing with it. And I have found that sometimes like feedback helps you get over the blocks that you sometimes get into. Like you just don't get ideas beyond a point. And talking to having a team that shares their feedback, shares their thoughts, I think that really helps move forward with that project or idea.
No, I completely agree. Like, I feel like if anything as well, like feedback doesn't just apply for UX. I feel like if you can take good feedback, you're pretty good in like any career that you want to go into, or even just, I feel like just life.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's true. Um, yeah, I think we got into UX design and we can't, I think we're really passionate about it. But I would like to know more about your college life and how University of Toronto, right? Um, you did your bachelor's and master's from there?
Yes, so I did my bachelor's at U of T too, but it's in a different campus. So now I'm doing my master's in the main campus. So yes, like but for the most part, yeah, my entire post secondary degree is from University of Toronto.
Yeah. Tell us about how's the college like, and is it your final year or do you have
Hmm.
more classes going on
Yes.
for this?
So oh sorry. Yeah, so I'm going into my final year of my master's degree. So this coming September, and then hopefully we'll graduate next year and then be done with school. So, I know, yeah. I think that is it for me. I don't think I'd want to pursue anymore, and yeah, that would be like my time to really just get out there now.
Yeah. What are some best parts about the school?
Yeah, so I would say it's like a pretty so because like I was from a different campus, it's like a different feel from like the one that I'm currently in now. So I would say like University of Toronto, like St. George campus, which is the main campus, is very like I would say if you look at the architecture itself, it's very like historical and it's like pretty big. Like there's different like universities within the university sorry, colleges within the university, so and different departments as well. So for me, like I haven't like fully explored like everything yet, but I what I really like about that campus is that it's in the city, so you just after your class you could just go and then like eat somewhere outside and it's like it's there, and then you have different options you can never explore because you're literally in like the like heart of Toronto. Um, and then in terms of like just like learning, I've had like a pretty good time so far. So again, like I'm like in like this other section of like school, the Faculty of Information at the University of Toronto. So I haven't really like explored like the other parts, but yeah, it's been really good. Like the professors are also really nice, and then obviously for the most part, like some classes are um tough, but I think for like for master students compared to other bachelor students, it's like it's a different type of feel, and that they want to make sure that you really succeed. So like compared to like say like a bachelor's degree where it's like a lot of people, and I don't want to I don't want to really like say this, but like obviously like you've heard it from like some universities, they want to like weed out some people, they want to make sure that like the strongest stays, which would be like, you know, obviously a very stressful thing. Like University of Toronto is like a pretty like stressful school for the most part, is very heavy on academics. um so again, like it really depends on the program as well that you go into, because like some programs are like I would say in, you know, a little bit more lighter in terms of the course load compared to other programs. Whereas my bachelor's, I did it in the Mississauga campus, and it's more because it is a newer campus, it's more modern. um and yeah, so the architecture is modern, again contrasting to the historical architecture of University of Toronto St. George campus. And it's not within a city, it's actually in its own little it's an own area, and it's surrounded by woods, and you just see deer everywhere. So again, very different experiences. I like both of them. I also liked UTM. Again, it's like more modern like architecture, which also I really like because it's very open. And what I like about it too is like it is it in its own area. I mean, you can't access food as easily, but it's nice to see the deer here and there. And then again, like it's the same thing as like it's still U of T. Like there's some programs that are really tough. um my program there though is I had a really good community in my program. I feel like I am pretty lucky because compared to like other programs in UTM, I think we have a more like tight knit type of relationship with each other. So yeah, that's what I would say. Like I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yeah, it gives me a really like visual experience of both the campuses. Sorry, searching for deers. So one is within the nature and one is like the modern
within the
architecture.
city.
So that sounds good. Yeah. So it's good that you had both the experiences rather
Hmm.
than, having both masters and bachelors in one
Yes,
campus.
yes,
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
I think since you did study some psychology, did you come across Dr. Jordan Peterson as your professor at any point?
Mm. No, I actually didn't, because Jordan Peterson is he's in the main campus of St. George, and I don't know if he still teaches, actually. I'm not sure. Or does he just do I'm not sure, like don't quote me on that, because and whereas like I did my psychology minor in the UTM campus, so the Mississauga campus. So yeah, again, like I don't know if he still teaches, and I could imagine like his classes probably are packed. Yeah.
I've seen some of his classes, and they're pretty nice. Yeah, he really teaches intensely, and
Oh, yeah. I could imagine. But yeah, no. Yeah, I'm not sure if he still teaches.
right. Um, what would you say to someone who would be entering college right now, and
Mm-hmm.
choosing a field, a profession? How did you think about it?
Mm-hmm.
Because you didn't
Yeah.
just get here like in a
Mm-hmm.
snap. You did your um, due diligence and thinking, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
analyzing your options.
So I would say, like if I were to just give like one like advice, keep your mind open. So just because like I again like for me like a lot of like people even just like not just me we go into like say like university college and then we had this set idea that this is what we're going to do, but then as you go through your experience you discover other things. Like for example UX, like I don't know, when I graduated high school and went into university I didn't even know that existed. So I only learned through that like during my time. So I would say again like keep your mind open, just like try a bunch of things if you can, like if you have the capability to do so. um Meet people as well, because the people also that's how you like discover other things, and they also like push you and motivate you to like do new things as well, right? So I would say like yeah, like the three things is keep your mind open, meet people, and try out new things. Those would be the, I mean keep your mind open and try new things are like pretty much the same thing, but
But yeah, I think it's the one is the actually thinking part, one is the third one is the doing part,
yeah,
which
yeah.
uh, try things hands on and
Hmm.
see how you feel, when you do it. Like,
Yes, yes, I
um,
agree.
like in, I think in like the times that we live in today, one could just go on any platform like YouTube or
Mhm.
any course platform and get guided for something that they just want to try on and see if they want to
Yeah.
actually get into like a full-fledged master's course or bachelor's
Mhm.
course. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, I
yeah,
agree.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Did
Yeah, no,
you
I agree.
do did you do your classes remotely or was it totally on campus?
I did a mix of both. So I would say obviously like the final year of my undergrad I was all online because of the pandemic, and then in my first year of my master's program it was a mix of both. So I had like online classes, but I also had my more practical stuff in person, which was really nice because I feel like when you do UX things and then also you're surrounded by a bunch of designers, it's it has a different type of energy when you're in the room and then brainstorming together or ideating, designing together. It's very different, and you actually have like the more stereotypical image of like a UX designer is putting post-its on a whiteboard. So you actually get to do that. So it's nice. So yeah, I would say did both.
Okay. Can you explain me like what is it that those that is done with those post-its? Because I've never really used them except on this platform called Miro. Uh, so could you walk us a little bit through that? What do you like brainstorm an idea?
Mhm. So yeah, like as you said, like you usually like the digital part of it is like when you use like Miro or like even like FigJam or like Miro or any of those platforms. So basically, like I mean, like the concept of like post-its is it's like it's easy to move them around and you just stick them. So normally, like that's when you have like that whole diverge and converge idea going on. So you first like diverge in terms of like you just come up with as many ideas. So I guess like an example would be like it's either you come up with as many of like the um solutions that you could think of. And, like, remember what I'm saying? Like, just think of like the wackiest ideas, or like whatever like ideas you could think of. Yeah, just go crazy, right? Because like at this point, you're not judging, you're just ideating. So that's like the concept of like putting it on post-its, which I feel like obviously with the digital aspect, you lose that aspect of really handwriting it. And because at times you also want to like maybe like put illustrations, put sketches of it, right? To explain your idea more. And again, like as get as crazy as you can. Um, and then after that diverging, now you like kind of group them into the white onto a whiteboard, for example, or like any board, and then you just like move them around and see like which like cluster them and see like which are like the same type of themes, same type of ideas. And then that's when you kind of like start like, oh, figuring out like the common things. And then maybe like start doing process of elimination. And again, that's like the convenience of a post-it, because you could just move it around. Which again, like you could do that on Miro. It's just like if you want to do like the more sketching part, you can't necessarily do that on um Miro as well.
Yeah, and it's more tangible and tactile. So maybe you are indulging yourself in the process, like rather than just on the device that you're working on. Yeah, I see.
Yes, I agree. And again, the energy is different because you both, like, if you're in a team, like, you put them all together and then you both all step back and then you just see it all together, right?
Yeah, and there's this eureka moment where you
Yeah.
light up your ideas.
You're like,
Yeah,
whoa.
I would say the energy would be different in a room where you actually stick the post-its.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes sense. This kind of activity reminds me of have you read this book called Sprint by Jake Knapp? So it's written by someone at Google Ventures. So they have this process that the fastest way to build like a prototype if you have an idea. So from Monday to Friday. So they have 5 days. So I think it's based on the foundation of design thinking, but they present it in their own way. So you ideate, you prototype, you test with the users, and then you finally sketch out some solutions. And throughout the process, like you are flexible and always talking to the users and keeping in check with the reality. Like, is this really useful? How might we solve this? Uh, like working on actual problems. So yeah, that reminds me of that.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a cool book. But yeah, no, as you said, I think that is a good strategy. And like, I feel like the time crunch as well, it really forces you to just like kind of do it and then get feedback really quickly as well. Because, like, as I mean, it's pretty common just like with some people as well that you want to be like a perfectionist. You want to make sure that this is like good right away. But obviously, again, like with UX, you go through a lot of iterations, so at times it's actually like you should try to avoid not like wanting it to be perfect, and hence why we have like the MVPs, right?
Yeah, I think you mentioned some tools, I think, for whiteboarding, Miro, FigJam. Do you use Figma?
Yes, yes, that's primarily what I use.
Life in Canada. Have you been in Canada since the beginning, or did you move here? Tell us a little bit about the city that you live in and probably the country.
Yes. So for me, actually, I moved here when I was 14. So I started high school here. So I grew up in the Philippines, and then like my family moved here, and so I spent my I would say like I spent my childhood in the Philippines, and then my teenage years and like up to now here. So obviously, as you said, like there are like differences because they are different countries. So I think if I were just to like say like really quickly, like the main thing that like just shocked me was how open the space is and how dispersed the people are. And because I live in the suburbs, like right now I live in the suburbs, because like and in the Philippines it's like a pretty dense area, like as at least where I live, because it's kind of like the suburbs near the city. It's near the main capital, Manila. So I would say like where I live now is actually like a good comparator to where I lived in the Philippines, because where I live now is like the outskirts of the main city, Toronto, But again, it's just the difference of like, wow, like it's I walk and sometimes I only see like one to two people at times. Whereas like if I walked in the Philippines, I am like, okay, I'm seeing everyone. I'm like it's
Yeah, I would
people
say
everywhere.
I think Asian countries are more
Yeah.
densely populated than North American.
Hmm. Hmm.
Maybe it seems so, at least, like from what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Also, Canada has like I think the second biggest land mass in terms, and the thing is like Canada doesn't even use majority of that because obviously like up north is more ice, more frozen. So like a lot of like the population is dispersed at like, certain areas, certain cities, but at the same time again it's not as like densely I mean maybe like the cities, like for example Toronto, like when you do walk in Toronto, because it is a major city, you do like it is more densely packed, and you know that the traffic is horrible. But I could imagine it is more horrible in other places. But yeah, it's just it is like there's like a lot of like under like even in my area again there's a lot of like just like patches of like forest still. um but I mean yeah, that's why I guess like there's more nature, as I said, like you used to see deer at times.
So you are going to complete your internship. What's next for you? What do you think you have?
Well, so after I complete my internship, I'm gonna like finish up my degree, and then after that, I'm deciding on whether I should go right into applying now, because again, like my internship made me realize that I would hope to get into health tech, because it made me like it just like I just really liked it, and I just really liked the purpose and like the company's mission as well, of like just providing good quality care and providing access to good quality care to people. And I also know that right now, especially again like with like what happened with for the past 3 years, 2 years, about just like healthcare is obviously very important to begin with, but there's also this aspect of preventative healthcare. So we don't want to, like, obviously again like with what happened, like you want to make sure that you're not just treating it when it happens and like addressing it when it's already happening. You want to make sure that you're also um you're preventing that from happening in the first place. And yeah, like that just like emphasize that importance for me to go into that field and like realize it. And also again like we like obviously with technology you realize that people don't really want to, at times they're hesitant nowadays even more so, to even go to like a clinic to get a checkup or like go to the emergency room. And also like sometimes like emergency rooms waits are really long. And yeah, like you never know like when you go in person if it's, so you're surrounded by like sick people as well, right? Um so it's also alleviating. Yeah, yeah, right. It's also alleviating like some of the pressure that we have on like, like our nurses, our doctors, and like our hospitals. If you could just like use technology to like help them, either through like I don't know, the medicine, or even like other like ways that you could just like alleviate that like pressure off of them. Like I said, I mean, like they kind of deserve that with all of like everything that's been going on recently. They've been working a lot. So yeah, that's just like my internship made me realize that hopefully I could get into something health tech related. But like again, like you just keep your open mind. That's like my goal. But again, keep your like I'm keeping my mind open and seeing like there's other emerging industries out there that I never know. Again, like we never even knew that UX existed. Um, so yeah, we very excited for that, but we will see. But so far right now I do want to like obviously get like a product designer position, like not like just an internship in the future. And yeah, and then just go forward with it.
So what preparations do you have to once you are done with the master's course? Can you highlight a little bit of that, like portfolio making? like all the collaterals. So what goes into it?
Yeah, so right now my portfolio, I'm planning to edit it again this coming September, October, because it is like I the last time I updated it was probably April or March. So hoping to do that, and also like, just like my whole process is to pick out the projects first, and then obviously like with this as well, I have to check with confidentiality matters with my company if I choose to do like some of the projects that we have there. And then after I pick out my projects, I write like the case studies for that first, on like I use Notion most of the time, so I just use the like I figure out like the layout of what's gonna go in it before I actually really get into it. And then the next step that I do is I do prototypes on Figma, just in terms of like this is more of like the design layout of it, and to make sure also at the same time that it matches my website. So currently, like I have my website portfolio, but I already have like a whole like design identity to that, like a brand identity to it. But I might like change it. So like that's something that I just like have to like brainstorm as well. And then after I prototype it, or after I like do the mock-ups on Figma, I just go straight into it, and then I use WordPress for my portfolio. And yeah, so and then with that, like I mean, throughout that process I tried to get feedback from like peers, if anything, or like anyone else that I could get a hold of. And then also like with like the website as well, you want to make sure you keep testing that because sometimes obviously like you never know, like there might be some problems again, like with the even with the portfolio process you go through like iterations. And I feel like as like designers we always have that thing that it's like, oh, you send your portfolio and you're like, oh, I'm still working on it, it's not done yet. And I feel like that's just like a constant thing, like our portfolio is never really done.
Yeah, when you call it a day with the portfolio. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But even your work is constantly evolving. So,
Mm-hmm.
your internal standards would also uh,
Yes.
let you do certain things and like just get on with it. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think you're doing great. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's nice.
But yeah, yeah. As you said, it's your expectations also changes because I'm like one time I like this and I'm like now I'm like, okay, I'm not sure. I'm not sure anymore. But at least like I feel like I would say, because like I feel like a common thing that like people that are starting out are always like concerned about is like their portfolio, obviously. And there's also so many platforms that you could use, so many ways of doing it. And I think I would always just say just do it, just start it like wherever you can, as long as you have like, because if like the portfolio is the one that's hindering you from applying to jobs, then that's kind of hard, right? Because then you like kind of just pushing everything back. So I would say like start with like something that's like easy for you to do first as you work on your actual portfolio perhaps. And then even right now, like I have my actual portfolio, but I have some of the stuff that are like still work in progress. But like as long as you like just do your portfolio, just have something to show. Because yeah.
Yeah, get going and like start with the achievable, let's say a version of it, and uh, then make simultaneous versions of it. Um, yeah, makes sense. Do you have any tips on like the interviewing process or just some quick?
So yeah, I would say with the interviewing process, like what I've learned now is to kind of like some of the questions that they have are pretty similar as you go through like the different like interviews. Like for example, like the most common ones, tell me about yourself. And then another common one for like designers is like your design process. So I feel like with that, and then I think like might be like another thing is like how you work with stakeholders, but at the same time, this is like really dependent on the company at times. Um, so I would say like what I usually do is I go type in, like I like write down those questions that are very common, and then I just like write them down, like my answers, but obviously don't go off of like, because with like online interviews nowadays, right, it's so easy to just like look over your like notes on the side, but you don't want to sound robotic. So I would say, like, just like just have them, like, just write them down so you know what you're gonna say, but obviously don't read off of it. It's just for your own knowledge to solidify it. And again, like they always say this, but like, yeah, like be yourself. It's become like such a cliche.
Can you
But
tell me how can I be myself?
yeah, like I hate it when
When
people
someone
tell
tells
me
me,
that too. I
yeah.
hate it when people tell me that, and I'm like, be myself. but but like, I mean, there's some truth to it, just in terms of like, don't try to like, I guess, like, because sometimes it comes off like, like if you've ever like tried interviewing someone as well, you can kind of see when, like, obviously like that person is nervous or that person is just very like robotic. So you don't want to come off as that. And also, another thing, just like with the whole application process, if they don't accept you, don't take it too hard, because sometimes it's not about like your capabilities as a designer. It's just that you might not be what they're looking for at the moment. um like, for example, yeah, because like, for example, like in terms of like skill sets, what if they're looking for this type of designer, but you're not that type of designer? Doesn't mean that you're a bad designer. It just means that you're not a right fit for that at the moment, because they're looking for something else.
Mhm. And if you do like consistently get like rejections, maybe it's like a feedback to improve like something that's not working out. And when you said that people do get frozen, so just remember that they are humans. Like you're talking to a person who is just like you, but doing something else, maybe interviewing you. So yeah, just relax.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're completely right with that. They're also human. Like, don't get. They also started off like they know what you're going through. They've gone through that, and I think like a tip, like a more like personal tip that I used to use is like before like a meeting or whatever, like just do something like, I don't know, like crazy, like, because you know how like when they say like when you do power poses, it actually impacts you as well, which is true, because it's like your physical environment impacts like how you feel inside, and then vice versa. So like, just like, I don't know, like do power poses, like put your like arms like that, or even like voice, like you know how like, yeah, like you know how like singers, for example, they do vocal warm-ups. It's a very weird advice, but I think it works. Like, just like, I don't know, make weird sounds, because it makes you seem ridiculous, and you just laugh at yourself, and then like gets rid of your nervousness.
Yeah, you feel really light about the whole situation and like take it easy. Yeah. And when yeah, I think yeah, that's good advice. Thank you. Um, yeah. Okay. I'm going to ask you a really flip question. If you were not a UX designer at this point, what would you have been?
Mm. Hmm. If I was like, if I were to have a different profession right now, that's not a UX designer, what would I be? That's a good question, actually.
Or maybe moving forward also. You know, you can totally do anything, but just for a thought experiment.
Hmm. Well, I would say, like, this is more like wishful thinking. It'd be cool to be an influencer, because you just get free stuff. And then it's pretty good. But it is a lot of like hard work as well, because you have to create content and all of that. And like, obviously, it's a little bit scary, because like people like just putting themselves out there. And I'm like, oh, this is again like more wishful thinking. I don't think that I'm actually gonna be like that, because like I feel like,
No, yeah,
again, like
that's
it's,
the idea. Like just say whatever comes to your mind.
yeah.
But
So
everywhere.
kudos to them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would say. And then I feel like, yeah, like I think I considered being an astronaut before, but I I thought it was just planet hopping. I didn't realize you actually had to do like math, for example, and like really prep for it. But yeah, and physics, yeah. So I was like, okay, I like science to a point.
Yeah, that's true. So, okay, you would have contributed to a spacefaring civilization.
Yeah, I think yeah, I would be a space person, but again, that was like that was like my wish as a young person, but now we are going into UX, so maybe I'll do UX for space.
Wow. That's a good one.
Yeah, you never know, they
Yeah.
need UX too.
Yeah. That's right. I think the physical design that's the in space, that's the like thing that he needs UX the most. Uh, combined with like actual physics and things that make it work and fly. So yeah. So because they have to, take a certain amount of weight and have a certain kind of design to it that actually, lets it. I don't know the words for this.
Yeah, no, I think I kind of know what you're talking about in terms of like there's also UX that are you're designing for things that are kind of like risky at times as well, like physical things. Like I know like there's UX designers for like nuclear power plants, um, and as you said, like for space as well. Like at times that could be like pretty risky. Like both like I don't know, it could be risky in terms of like physical risk and also like
Yeah,
maybe
it's
like
very high
political
stakes,
risk.
right? Very high
Hmm.
stakes. I think what we talked about or what we are kind of up to is software design, like
Hmm.
things that contribute to um so
The
yeah,
digital world.
um,
Hmm.
digital world. Um
Yeah, which yeah, I feel like with like those high stakes one, they require more of that like cognitive aspect from your knowledge.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's looks a little hard at this point. Um but yeah, definitely something that I'm curious about. I think even you're curious about it. So let's see. Um, I would like to close with this one thing that I read. Maybe you can also share something interesting that you um takeaway that you have. I think um yeah, I came across I was in this architecture design library, and one of the lines said, "Good design goes unnoticeable, and bad design is very evident. It just catches the eye." Good design is like so smooth that it does the job and you don't notice it. So yeah, just
Hmm. No, that's yeah. No, I completely agree. I really like that as well. It's a bit for as UX designers, it's a bit like if you really like recognition and all of that, like you're not gonna get it if you get good design unless it's with people that actually know it. Like more like industry professionals, they'll actually notice if it's good design. But as like a regular user, yeah, as you said, like you just go day by day, and then if it's really good, then it's so seamless that you don't even notice anything. But then, as you said, if it's really bad, then you obviously notice it. You're like, oh wow, I can't do this because then it's a disruption in your flow, right? And then as like UX designers, we hope to not disrupt that, but like kind of go with that flow or like assist that flow, right? So if it's like that, then people don't really notice it, which is like I completely agree. That's like our goal here is for people not to notice our work. um, yeah. So yeah, I completely agree. It is like that type of work you want to make sure that because like you don't want to add to their like cognitive load if the user's not thinking about it, then that's a good thing.
yeah, in most cases. And yeah, it it really depends on what you want to achieve at that point. You want to get them excited, want to get the job done. So yeah.
And also like as designers, like for us, we're kind of trained to also notice that good design, which is as you probably know, it's like a bit harder to even like for us as designers who are like trained to do that, it's still a bit harder to notice some of the good designs. because it is like kind of hiding in the shadows of like that interface. But yeah, you got to do that because like that's how you kind of like copy what design is good.
Yeah, totally. Any closing thoughts that you have? How did you find the time here?
It was good. It was really nice to talk to you. Just talk about design. Like talking about design is really nice, and just like hearing your perspective as well. And then yeah, like again, like realizing that like our goal as designers is for people not to notice the changes that we would make or like what we're doing.
Thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was really fun.